contribution to the anthology, responding to Peter Handke, is entirely made up of quotations from people who are not me or Peter Handke. The reason for that is when I first began reading, which is relatively recently, I was in my mid-20s, I became obsessed. It completely took over my life because I hadn't read at all when I was young. I didn't grow up with books given to me, and I certainly wasn't in a literary family, a very working-class English family. So when I discovered it, I completely submerged myself in it, and I would spend 7 or 8 hours a day reading. And what I found, what really hurt me, was if someone had asked me after I just watched the film what happened in this scene, I'd be able to describe it perfectly. But if they asked me what happened about 100 pages into every book I'd read, it was as though I didn't read the book. There was no way for me to kind of contain the actual content of the book apart from a summary, which was almost visual, almost like a translation of what I've experienced. And there's books now which I claim to have read, but if you ask me what actually happened in the books, I don't know. And there's other books which I pretend I've read and I haven't. So what I started to do is I started to write down every single phrase that I thought stood out. This was with poetry initially, and so I'd build up documents and documents and documents of other people's phrases that had no context, especially in poetry, because they're not narrative or rhetorical, and therefore they were just random moments with a name underneath them. Half of the time the name was obscure because these were anthologies of, say, Spanish or Argentinian poetry. In all that, 2 authors were so powerful and infuriating to me that I was almost typing out whole pages. The first, from Austria, was Robert Musil, who I basically have typed out a small novella of The Man Without Qualities, which is a 2,000-page novel which never finished, and the other was Peter Handke, who just drove me mad, because over and over again I would find these little moments and not quite understand why I was writing these down as whether they were poetry. And now I have something like 11,000 of these quotes, and I'm slowly shaping them into a kind of a novel made purely of quotes. So I went back to the time when I first wrote down a Peter Handke quote, which I think is like 2011, and I copied down everything around those quotes that wasn't Peter Handke. More people dig their graves with their teeth than we imagine, Robert Surtees. They are no longer protagonists, there is only the chorus, Ortega y Gasset. Beyond the light stand failure and remorse, Philip Larkin. I am all these things, and beside me there is nothing, from the Upanishads. I load myself with chains and try to get out of them, Austin Clarke. A mature artist takes the material closest to hand, George Moore. A corpse, beside it is Violet, Hugh MacDiarmid. Was she beautiful or not beautiful? And what was the secret of form or expression which gave the dynamic quality to her glance? Was the good or the evil genius dominant in those beams? Probably the evil. George Eliot. Shy and unready men are great betrayers of secrets, for there are few wants more urgent for the moment than the want of something to say. Sir Henry Taylor. If all men knew what others say of them, there would not be 4 friends in the world. She poured a little social sewage into his ears, George Meredith. Sitting in bed on Sunday morning, eating hot buttered toast with cunty fingers, Henry Green. You don't love me anymore. That's the truth in 6 words, Marina Tsvetaeva. And multiply the figures as I walk, naked, between my succubi, Ben Jonson. Men, too, secrete the inhuman, Albert Camus. We know very well what there is hiding under other people's tails, but we cannot live without sniffing, Miroslav Kaleza. It was then that we discovered what age means. It has nothing to do with time. It is something which makes us say we are here, a miracle that cannot be repeated. By contrast, youth is the vilest of all illusions, Eugenia Montale. The only good which we discover in life is something which produces an oblivion of existence, Madame de Staël. The majority of humankind only enjoy life by forgetting they are alive. For in much wisdom there is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow, the Ecclesiastes. No other end of the world where there be, Czesław Miłosz. Reader of books, I too wanted to find my peaceful paradise in obedience to consciousness. I loved them, those strange ways where there are no hopes, no memories. Nikolai Gumilyov. You might be a man all desires, but you will never comprehend the madness of spring if you refuse to take risks. Ghazi al-Ghazali. And we shall remember the face as it sets, and more appears, a mask that seems moulded by murderers' hands, and becoming purest colour, we shall not know one another. Gennady Agi. Thanks.